Hey, this is Cochise with Cochise Rome. Weighing on the weight classes, episode 7B, the review of UFC 136, Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 3. First off, let me thank everybody out there. When I first started weighing on the weight classes, I had about 60 hits, and I kind of kept with about 100 hits up until episode 6. I got like 800, and this time, we broke 1,000. So thank all of you guys, because I'll be damned if anyone cared about my movie ideas or my social commentary or my comic book reviews. It's so strange because those videos are so much shorter than these, and I play weighing on the weight classes very straight, while those have a lot of comedy to them. So I'm very grateful for 1,000 hits, and let's just keep it going. All right, guys. So let's get into it right now. This time I was 4-1, I believe, and I'm going to get into the fight that I was wrong with. That's the Melvin Gillard versus Joe Lauzon. I think Melvin Gillard lost this fight because he didn't respect Joe's striking, and to be honest with you, if I was Melvin, I probably would have approached the fight the same way, put the pressure on and try to beat him. He ended up getting subs. The thing is, it's a little disappointing because, he changed his life around. He got a new camp, he stopped the drugs, and then, he hits into a roadblock. So this will actually show whether or not his maturity is prevalent in his actions rather than just his words. See how he takes this loss, and hopefully he can rebound and one day be a #1 contender. Okay, so let's get into another fight with Jorge Santiago versus Damon Maia. Now the thing is, I feel that Jorge Santiago is one of those Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts who only has a top game. Even without Rogan repeating it over and over and over about how his Jiu-Jitsu can nullify Maia from getting subbed, there was really nothing going on from Santiago's ground game. He wasn't trying to sweep, he wasn't attacking, and he was just sitting there playing guard. I mean, he was just doing posture control. And to be honest with you, many MMA fighters, for the most part, who are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, really only have a top game. I mean, the guys who have back games would be someone like Frank Mir, Minotauro Nogueira, Nate Diaz, Damon Maia, Jacare, and Anderson Silva. Those are the guys who can actually play off their back and be very dangerous. And then, of course, there's Shinya Aoki, but that's way out in the dream. The thing is, I don't understand why the crowd was booing so much, because Damon Maia the whole time was pushing the fight and trying to get into better positions once the fight got on the ground, which it did a number of times. Unfortunately, he was not able to do anything once he was stuck in Santiago's guard. It was an exciting fight. By no means it wasn't exciting at all, but it wasn't boring, and it wasn't bad enough to boo. It's just a situation where two fighters, one fighter is just only barely better enough than the other fighter, and just ended up being that way. One thing I have to say is that Damon Maia's striking regressed, not to the point before the Mark Munoz fight, but it kind of went to this really weird in-between point where he's throwing wild punches. If you look at the Mark Munoz fight, he's much more crisp. I don't understand what happened there. So maybe he got overconfident in his hands. He decided, well, I don't have to train no more because I'm already good now. Damon Maia, you still need to work on your hands a little bit. But, he very aggressive this fight. Nam Van Garcia played out exactly like I thought it would, and it was pretty sloppy, but Nam Van pulled off the win. I still don't know where these two guys stand in the lightweight division of the UFC. Nam Van does not have a good enough style to deal with more physically stronger fighters. Garcia is just too sloppy with his hands. But it's actually it's a good story that Nam Van revenged his loss, which was a very weird and controversial decision. Going off to Chael Sonnen, which I was very impressed because he finished the fight finally. I don't know the last time he finished a fight in the UFC. I can't even think of it. Way more dominating than I predicted with the Brian Stann fight. And let me get off on something, because let me look at my notes here. A lot of people were chanting, Anderson Silva's name, and he wants to have a rematch. But the thing is look, the guy pissed hot, and then he got caught doing some money laundering. I don't feel that after one fight he deserves a title shot. To be honest with you, I consider Yoshihiro Akiyama ranked above Brian Stann, even though he lost 3 times, because Akiyama's faced way tougher competition, and Vitor Belfort knocked him out. The only way that we can solve this is having Vitor Belfort face Chael Sonnen, but that'll leave a big old question mark as what the Anderson Silva will do during this time period. Maybe he'll make another run at the 205, maybe a fight, I don't know, Rampage Jackson at 205 or something in the meantime. Because right now, there's really nothing you can do with Anderson Silva, because both fighters, both Vitor Belfort and Chael Sonnen, have a lot of holes in their game, whether it's either being as a person, Chael Sonnen, or that devastating knockout Vitor Belfort lost to with the upkick to the face. So these two guys, they need to fight, and then that person will go on to face Anderson Silva. Let me go on to the Jose Aldo versus Kenny Florian fight. Oh God, what happened to the WEC Jose Aldo? I mean, you look at that highlight reel that they were showing, and Jose was just whooping everyone's ass. And I only got to see 2 fights of Jose Aldo while he was in WEC. That was the Uriah Faber fight and the one where he won the belt for Mike Thomas Brown. Both of them were ass whoopings. I really don't know what happened to Jose Aldo. I mean, everyone's talking about the weight cutting experience, but you have to understand that this is not some trademark Jose Aldo, specialty of cutting weight. You or I can do that if we wanted to. I'm not, because that looks fucking terrible, and I'm not a fighter. I don't plan on ever being a fighter. But anyone can do this. I'm sure other featherweights and bantamweights and flyweights and even lightweights all go through a similar process. Probably, Quentin Jackson way up at 205 when he has to cut, 45 pounds before a fight. So the thing is that I understand that Jose Aldo's competition has went up slightly since coming to the UFC, but he's the champion. So he doesn't really have that excuse that every fight's a little bit different. He's fighting a little more tentatively, and really after the second round, rounds 3, 4, and 5 just became a very big blur to me. And 2 things were made clear after the second round. One, Kenny Florian was going to lose, and secondly, Jose Aldo would not or could not finish Kenny Florian, which made it for a very, very boring fight. I kind of blame Kenny for all that clinching, especially in the 4th and 5th rounds. See, here's the thing. Kenny Florian now is like the Donovan McNabb or Karl Malone of MMA. Now, please check out my State of MMA episode 2, where I go more into detail with Kenny Florian, what he needs to do now in the UFC, or just generally with his career. The saddest thing is I like Kenny Florian, and I think most people like Kenny Florian as a person, is that he would just never become a UFC champion. Unlike people like Minotauro Guerrero, who had Fedor as his kryptonite, or Boss Rutten, who had Ken Shamrock as his kryptonite, Kenny Florian's kryptonite is anything to do with the big fight. Jose Aldo, BJ Penn, Sean Strickland, vastly different fighters with vastly different styles, all ended up him not receiving gold. And I just wonder, what if those 3 fighters who I just mentioned, what if they weren't famous? Would he be able to beat them? I have no idea. I'm just imagining things. Now let's go off to the the lightweight championship with Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. It seems to me that Gray Maynard was somehow put in some hyperbolic suspended animation time chamber since the last fight that these two guys had together. There was no improvements, and it was baffling to me while I was watching this. It played out, the first 2-3 rounds played out bit for bit like the second one. Okay, not the third round so much, because that's when Frankie Edgar was really making strides on, beating Gray Maynard. But the thing is, I have to say that I'm very happy that this ended the way it should have ended. The more marketable fighter with a slightly more exciting style finished his opponent. On the flip side, they're technically now 1-1, and I predict that maybe at some point when Frankie Edgar does lose the lightweight belt, him and Gray Maynard will fight for a fourth time. That whole thing about him being the second pound-for-pound fighter in MMA, complete bullshit. Complete bullshit. I can't consider a guy who barely cuts any weight as a fighter to be the top pound-for-pound second fighter right behind Anderson Silva. There's still George St. Pierre. There's still, to be honest with you, Cain Velasquez. So, I mean, I think Edgar's good, but his last fight being a draw, and this fight he's finally finishing somebody. Number two, I don't see it happening. But he's a very, very good fighter and a heart of a lion. Oh my God, that guy has heart. I think now this is how the lightweight fight should take place. I think Joe Lauzon versus Nate Diaz makes a lot of sense, as well as Gray Maynard versus Anthony Pettis. I'm so sorry if I got the name wrong. Then Ben Henderson versus Clay Guida for the #1 contender spot, and Frankie Edgar versus Gilbert Melendez. So I think those 8 fighters should kind of play out in that way. Other than that, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you for helping me break 1,000 hits. I see you guys at State of MMA, and then Way on the Weight Classes, episode 8, where I'm talking about George St. Pierre versus Chris Conner. Take care.